This video is brought to you by Devout Decals, makers of reusable Catholic art for your home altar, your bedroom, and your home classroom.
But we have today a story of a desperate cleric who was burned badly by his working with corrupt officers in Rome in the highest profile scandals in the church in the last 5 years. And he is now proposing reforms. And this would be another figure that good bishops should just keep a distance from, not pay attention to, and pray to prevent more of them coming. And this is a figure who is very famous in the church these days. This bishop, or cardinal in this case, is lashing out. And why is he lashing out? Because he was the fall guy for something he was involved in. The fall guy for something that might have involved Francis himself. The details seem to suggest that Francis wasn't pleased when he found out what he was involved with, but this guy got himself into the kinds of political quagmire in Rome, like the palace intrigue in Rome that involved Cardinal Pell, that this is of such detail and such salaciousness that it could very well make a fascinating Hollywood movie if Hollywood could handle making a movie about the Roman Curia that wasn't disgusting. Like that new movie Conclave, which I keep forgetting to check its box office numbers for, but I hope that it is failing spectacularly. But we go to Pillar Catholic, who put this report out yesterday, and it's gotten no attention, and this is incredible. The headline, Becciu says Pope should no longer be head of state. Cardinal Angelo Becciu, the former papal chief of staff, convicted of financial crimes, has said that the exercise of papal power needs to change, calling for the Pope to lose his governing authority in Vatican City State. Yeah, talk about desperate. Becciu was the fall guy. And like most fall guys for evil offenses, he was a participant in the activities he was the fall guy for. And now his big solution to this is to radically transform the Vatican and how it's governed, to not have the Pope, not just Francis, but any Pope, be the head of state of Vatican City. You know, in the 1960s, the popes took off the papal tiara, the tri-crown that they would wear, and each level of that cone crown would represent something else. And one of those was his temporal political authority. They surrendered all of it. This is a beyond silly argument he's making here, but the details of the things he says here are very eye-opening. If you have questions about what happened to Cardinal Pell, Cardinal Becciu let some of that slip, and it makes those of us who have had this theory that Cardinal Pell was, well, we'll say that the surgery he had that he did not survive was a routine surgery, and the manner of his passing is mysterious. And it will lend credence to those of you who think something happened to him. This is Becciu getting ready to spill the beans. Now, in this article, for whatever reason, the author put all the relevant stuff sprinkled throughout the article, probably to make you want to read the whole thing. So I put it all together in one place from you. This is all directly quoted from the article, though, so we turn to that. Quote, Becciu, who was convicted of embezzlement, fraud, and abuse of office by a Vatican City tribunal last year, is currently appealing a sentence of 5.5 years in prison, which was imposed after a trial which itself lasted more than 2.5 years. The cardinal gave an extensive series of interviews, filmed over the course of several years and broadcast last week on Belgian TV network VRT as part of the program Het Vaticaan de Staat van de Kerk. In the broadcast, the cardinal, whom Francis ordered to resign from office in 2020, pending his indictment and trial, discussed a range of controversial topics, including his views on Pope Francis, as well as his dealings with former Vatican financial authorities. While the cardinal continued to insist on his innocence throughout the interview sessions, his narrative events appeared often at odds with his admissions in court with other publicly known events. Despite Becciu's repeated insistence that he remains loyal to Pope Francis, during an interview segment filmed in Sardinia, the cardinal called for a radical overhaul of the Petrine office after Francis's reign. It will be necessary to clarify the exercise of papal authority, Becciu said. The cardinal went on to insist that the Pope should be removed from the temporal governance of Vatican City altogether. That is, he should no longer be a head of state. End quote. He doesn't exactly provide viable alternative to the Pope running as the monarch of Vatican City, the actual temporal city-state of the Vatican. But to his credit, his recommendation would be synodal in nature. That would be a synodal reform, because it is awfully rigid for the Pope to remain the head of the city-state of Vatican City as an autocratic ruler in light of advocating and endorsing decentralization of the Synod on Synodality. These requests that came from the Synod, they wanted the decentralization of papal authority, and man, would it be awfully rigid and clericalist and, dare I say, neo-pharisaical for him to demand to endorse their silly decentralization of the hierarchy, but then be the central ruler of Vatican City in a classic way. It would be very clericalist to keep the Pope of the Synodal Church as the head of the state of Vatican City, like he was under the Catholic Church. That would be not synodal, and the Synodal Church demands synodality. So maybe Cardinal Becciu is onto something for the new religion. But he continues, and he spills the beans on something of interest to those who think Cardinal Pell passed away under suspicious circumstances. See, prior to his passing, Cardinal Pell was investigating financial problems in the Vatican, like Archbishop Vigano before him. And this is where Cardinal Pell's troubles began. So here is Cardinal Becciu on Cardinal Pell. Quote, "With Cardinal Pell, we did have a period of contrast, but my contrast stemmed not from wanting to oppose the reforms, but because Cardinal Pell wanted to impose rules that were not rules yet," Becciu claimed in the interview, meaning reforms of financial processes in Rome. He wanted to audit the accounts of the Secretariat of State. But to audit the Secretariat of State's accounts, you need authorization from the Pope, which never happened, said Becciu. However, as previously reported by The Pillar, both Pell and Malone have said Becciu initially cooperated with their efforts to audit the Secretariat of State, but became confrontational after they discovered a series of loans and investments obscured from departmental ledgers, using accounting practices prohibited under Vatican financial law. Becciu has routinely stated in court that the Secretariat of State was outside the oversight of both the Secretariat for the Economy and the Office of the Auditor General, despite no such exemption being present in either department's remit. Moreover, in legal hearings for a lawsuit brought by Malone following his dismissal, lawyers from the Secretary of State conceded Malone's assertion that he was acting within his mandate trying to investigate Becciu's former department. End quote. The Cardinal Secretary of State is called the Vice Pope. The current Cardinal Secretary of State is considered, generally speaking, to be the front runner to be a Pope Francis II, although he's thought he would take the name John the 24th. But he is that kind of a figure and has a lot of questions surrounding him. Cardinal Pell was investigating him, the man who is often called the second most powerful man in Rome. He is the architect of the deal with Cardinal Zen's home country. To give you an idea of the power we're talking about here, Cardinal Pell was investigating his office just prior to visiting Australia to investigate related financial misdeeds. And at that time, money was mysteriously transferred to unknown figures in Australia, where Pell was then weirdly accused of being like Ted McCarrick in an obviously fabricated story. Anyone who's ever served a mass for a bishop knows that story was fabricated, because you have been in a sacristy or in other parts of a parish during a cardinal's mass, and there's no place for the things that they said happened could have happened. It was impossible. And Cardinal Pell's life was run through the ringer of the secular system following this mysterious transfer. The Vatican Secretary of State is the Vatican's diplomatic office and has been accused repeatedly of having rather strong ties to the secular authorities and their various mechanisms of power in the worldwide system. Does this paint a clear picture for you of what happened to Cardinal Pell? That is what Becciu is saying. And he was the fall guy. He was a willing participant. He took advantage of things by all accounts. All accounts show that there's evidence that he sent money, like your tithing money, to his own brother who runs a nonprofit, and he profited personally off of that transfer. He's not innocent here from the looks of it. But he let that slip about Cardinal Pell. Does it begin to make things a little clearer for you? All right, folks. Thanks very much for tuning in today. As always, pray for the church. I'm Anthony Stine. Ave Maria.